kid, I never really had a plan for what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was never really interested in anything to do with the real world. My interest was always in make-believe. As a young boy, I would craft worlds based on stolen intellectual property and force my brothers and friends to play out the characters in my imagination. It wasn't until I was older and the real world was threatening that I conceded that while I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up, I knew it would have something to do with storytelling. As I started to focus on my craft, I realized that there was a very distinct difference between story and storytelling. What happens, who was there, when it happened, and where it happened are elements of a story, but have always struck me as nothing more than trivia. Understanding storytelling is to focus on the how and why. Why someone does what they do is far more interesting than what they do. To put it another way, a person who does interesting things isn't as fun to have at a party as a person who is interesting. So when I say Attack of the Clones is a bad movie, I don't mean the story. I mean the storytelling. And also some of the story. Hi, my name is Will, and this is First Draft, Second Pass, a video series where we look at films that feel like a first draft and give them a second pass. In part 2 of this two-part series, we'll be taking a look at Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, and trying to figure out what we can do to salvage this dumpster fire of a movie. Before we jump in, I recommend you check out our first video if you haven't watched the movie in a while, but it's not essential to the enjoyment of this video. I mentioned earlier that I don't think the storytelling in Attack of the Clones is all that compelling, and a lot of that has to do with the characters. Now, I'm going to editorialize quite a bit here when I say that every character in this movie ends up looking like a real idiot. They all make choices that result in something that is directly against their self-interest, and while that alone is not the problem is the movie's inability to make those choices feel either inevitable or reasonable. Quick aside, I'm looking at this as a continuation of my fixes to The Phantom Menace, so a few things are carrying over. This means changes to two characters, Padme and Jar Jar. Padme is now an advisor and translator for Senator Jar Jar Binks. She is now in a role parallel to Anakin's. I don't feel like the fact that she's no longer a senator changes too much because she eventually cedes all of her power away to Jar Jar anyways and doesn't do anything very senatorial. So let's get started. There are 4 main storylines that I'd like to address. There's our A story, which is Detective Obi-Wan. There is our B story, which is Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship. Our C story will be Anakin and Padme's courtship. And our D story is Palpatine's plans. So let's first take a look at the main plot of our movie, the A story. The main conflict in Attack of the Clones is that someone is trying to kill Padme, and over the course of the film, our characters unravel a much larger plot with clones, an evil Jedi, a deleted browser history, and a bad guy factory. In the background, Count Dooku and the Separatists are looking to separate, just got that, from the Republic. So of course the Republic doesn't want that to happen and are debating whether or not to create an army as a preventative measure. This is where I'd like to change a few things. Instead of having just Padme, or in our case Jar Jar, be the target of the attacks, I want to expand the murder plot to include more senators. We'll have it so that while the Senate is in session, it is bombed, killing and injuring pro-army senators. I want to illustrate that the Republic is in turmoil. So now the Jedi will task Obi-Wan to discover who is behind these attacks. Instead of having an assassin hired by an assassin that was hired by an old Jedi to be the primary clone for an army of the Republic that the old Jedi ordered in order to get power over himself,
I love democracy.
We'll just have a handful of clones be the culprits. This will put Kamino straight in the mind of Obi-Wan since it's a cloner planet. The nonsense about the planet being deleted is pointless considering he just goes to where it should be, which is exactly where it is. So I realize Obi-Wan really needs someone to talk to. Right now, he's just kind of a dude lurking around in his pajamas. Anakin is off with Padme, so Obi-Wan is assigned to investigate with a partner. Not a new character, but a promoted background character, an older, wiser, and far less hot-headed Jedi Master, Plo Koon. So some of you may be wondering why I picked this character when a more obvious choice would probably be either Yoda, since he's an established character, or Ki-Adi-Mundi, or even Kit Fisto, since they at least have some screen time. But the reason why is much simpler than that. Ever since Jedi Power Battles came out on the PlayStation, he has been my personal favorite background Jedi Master, and that is the only reason why I want him in the movie more. Moving on. I feel like this relationship is probably the most important in the prequel movies. There is a scene on Tatooine where Anakin loses his shit over feeling completely held back by Obi-Wan.
It's all Obi-Wan's fault. He's jealous. He's holding me back.
I feel like this scene would be better served if we actually saw Obi-Wan holding him back. Really, the only thing Obi-Wan is holding Anakin back from are potential sexual assault charges. I want to give Anakin a goal that is something other than sticking it to his old babysitter. He desperately wants to be a Jedi Knight and needs Obi-Wan's approval to start the trials. Unfortunately for Anakin, we'll establish that Obi-Wan low-key hates him. To Obi-Wan, Anakin is the little boy that Qui-Gon effectively replaced him with. On top of that, Anakin will often be using his natural talent with the Force to try and impress Obi-Wan, which Obi-Wan finds annoying. So mix in some jealousy, add a dash of withholding, pour over a father and son dynamic, and you have the perfect cocktail for a slightly toxic, less than healthy relationship. After the attack on the Senate, the Council will decide to split them up, with Obi-Wan going to Kamino with Plo Koon, and Anakin going to Naboo with Mace Windu. Right out of the gate, let's remove Anakin's unsettling, pursuer-at-all-costs attitude and give it to Padme. She's got the hots for him, and he's trying his very best to keep her from jumping his bones. It just makes more sense to me that the person less interested in pursuing a relationship is the person who's been told his entire life to avoid relationships. Since Anakin has now taken the role of the wet blanket, Padme will prove to be a little bit of a loose cannon. Let's make this line feel justified.
I do hope he doesn't try anything foolish.
I'd be more concerned about her doing something than him.
Also, we have Mace Windu coming along with them to Naboo, reinforcing Anakin's training and adding an extra layer of conflict. You know what? Let's just skip the Naboo scenes entirely. I don't really see the point in them. The location has nothing to do with the plot, and every scene looks like the cover of one of those romantic time-traveling sci-fi fantasy romance novels my mom and her friends like to read. Instead, what I have planned is a little bit of a stretch, but I think I can make it organic if 1. We establish early on that Anakin has been dreaming of and missing his mom, 2. The ship is damaged in an attack, and 3. If it was on the way last time, it's on the way this time. Our gang makes a quick stop on the planet Tatooine to pick up parts. I'm also going to change Kamino. I think it's weird that an entire planet would be working on a clone army for over 10 years and never once, I don't know, call or email their client? So let's have the cloning facilities be completely dilapidated. The clones are all still there, but the facility's operators have abandoned it. This is why no one has heard from Kamino in a while. So instead of clean, pristine halls run by slightly effeminate Slendermen, we'll have a gritty, run-down settlement full of scrappy warriors led by the mysterious and seemingly perma-helmeted Jango Fett. To add to the mystery, we'll learn that a few years back, a group of clones left with an unnamed Jedi. Obi-Wan assumes that the clones who left are the same ones from the attack. Not much of a leap considering they all look the same. He also suspects that the unnamed Jedi was Dooku. Jango says he knows where they went and can take Obi-Wan in exchange for a ride. Also, we'll have them fight in all of this to make things interesting. I don't know, we'll figure it out. So Obi-Wan and Jango will head to Geonosis while Plo Koon will stay behind and help the clones. On Tatooine, Anakin will discover that Watto sold his mom to a moisture farmer with a questionable definition of consent, and as his new step-slave master dad, Lars will tell Anakin that Tusken Raiders stole Shmi away in the night. At this point, I want to give Anakin an extra push to freak out. Remember, he needs to get into a murdery mood. So we'll have Mace Windu reveal to Anakin that the reason why he's not been able to take the trials and become a Jedi Knight is because Obi-Wan has been insisting to the Council that Anakin is not ready for them. This news is devastating to Anakin. So while trying to console and upset Anakin, Padme will admit that the main reason why she wants there to be an army is that she wants revenge on the Trade Federation. They are responsible for the death of her close friend and mentor, the Queen. And ever since then, Padme has had a little bit of a penchant for chaos. I want to give Padme some crazy ex-girlfriend vibes. And I am aware that I'm taking the only female character in the entire movie and saying, let's turn the crazy up to 11, but what am I supposed to do? I can't help that she marries Darth Vader. So the distress of possibly losing his mother and the betrayal of his master lead Anakin to say f it and sneak away to rescue his mom. Like before, they are too late and Shmi dies. But before Anakin can slaughter everyone in an emotional fit of rage, Mace Windu will arrive and stop him. I really don't think it's a good idea to have a main character kill a bunch of civilians in a romantic fantasy space opera. By having him be stopped before he can commit the act shows he has the potential inside of him, but it leaves it up to speculation. It's the Schrodinger's cat of plot devices. Obi-Wan and Jango arrive on the Bug Planet where they discover that the bad guys from the last movie are also the bad guys in this movie and are doing the same thing they did in the last movie, which Obi-Wan knew was probably already happening because he saw the last movie. But before Obi-Wan can do anything, Jango betrays him. Jango betrays Obi-Wan because the Trade Federation has a bounty out on all Jedis, and Jango needs the cash. In Attack of the Clones, Jango really doesn't have a motive to be doing anything that he's doing, other than maybe money, and it just seems like a lot of risk for a single parent to be taking. So let's have it be heavily implied that Jango is in deep with someone and he needs the cash to get his son back. The Trade Federation revealed that they are creating an army for Dooku in the Separatist movement. Dooku arrives and confirms this, but when Obi-Wan blames him for the attack on the Senate, Dooku claims to have been framed. He says that a Sith called Darth Sidious has infiltrated the Senate, and that is why he and Qui-Gon started the Separatist movement. See what I did there? So Dooku will be telling the truth. He is no longer his own red herring, but in fact just a red herring. I'm changing this because a large part of the story of the prequels is the Republic's slow descent into becoming the Empire, which means the Jedi are unknowingly fighting on the wrong side. Dooku and the Separatists are kind of the good guys. By now, a grieving Anakin is starting to act a little bit more like Padme because he realizes that all of his mentors don't seem to have much faith in him. So later, after getting word about the army and arriving on Geonosis, he and Padme charge in to save Obi-Wan, leaving Mace Windu to find a much more reasonable approach. Annie and Paddy jump around the factory and get captured, all culminating in Anakin giving in to Padme, and they share a kiss. Now let's move to the weird Coliseum crap, but this time Obi-Wan and Anakin are not only fighting monsters, but each other. Obi-Wan tries to explain why he felt Anakin wasn't ready, but Anakin doesn't want to hear it. Battle, battle, battle. Just as things are looking bad, Plo Koon arrives with a clone army to help kill all the robots. I bet you thought I forgot about our D story. Well, I didn't. After Anakin and the gang leave Tatooine, Jar Jar heads back to the Senate with news of the droid army. So now I'm gonna go slightly off the rails into fanfiction territory, but in order to heighten the drama, we'll have Palpatine reveal to Jar Jar that he was behind the attacks on the Senate. He was the Jedi who went to Kamino and took the clones. He needed a cause for the Senate to rally behind in order to give him the army he wanted, and the Separatists just weren't moving fast enough. But unfortunately, there still doesn't seem to be enough fear, and he wants to be sure this time. So using a blaster, he kills Jar Jar. Jar Jar becomes a martyr for the cause and the final push the Senate needs to give Palpatine the powers he desires. P.S. Jar Jar has like one line in the next movie, so I'm not changing too much. Anakin and Obi-Wan fight Dooku, but Dooku proves to be too much for them, not only because he is more powerful than them, but also because Anakin and Obi-Wan are still fighting each other. Side note, let's have Dooku's lightsaber be green, not red. During the fight, Anakin will try a number of reckless moves, and in an attempt to rein him in, Obi-Wan accidentally puts Anakin in harm's way and Dooku removes his arm. I want to include this because I feel like it's important that Obi-Wan is directly responsible for Anakin losing the most important tool he has as a Jedi, his sword arm. Shortly after, Yoda will arrive and Dooku will escape. Our movie will end with Palpatine's rise to power, Padme and Anakin starting a secret relationship, and war starting. So what can we learn from this? It's important to give your audience closure on a mystery even if you don't want your characters to be in on it. Don't have a suspect be their own red herring. Give all your characters a clear motivation for their actions. The more conflict between characters, the better. And lastly, if all else fails, kill someone. The best and worst part of storytelling is that once you tell a story, it's no longer yours. All art is bits and pieces of something someone else stole or borrowed from something else. We build on the talents of the past to push into the future. So maybe I'm full of shit, but part of the fun of art is that regardless of how you feel, having any feeling at all is in itself an act of participation. You've taken something from someone else's work and changed it to make it yours, whether you intended to do that or not. Your hate or admiration unwillingly becomes part of a larger piece of work regardless of what the original artist intended. And while it can be tough to hear what people have to say about something you love, the fact that they participated at all is a gift, and for that, I'm grateful. Thank you to everyone for watching. We're working hard and getting more videos out, so be sure to subscribe. These videos take a lot of time and effort as ideas are written and rewritten, so if you like what we do and want us to keep making them, consider joining our Patreon. Thank you for watching.